Welcome to Health Coach Tip Tuesday. I'm your host, Jess Delpino, FDN and FDN course advisor. And this week I have guest Martha Lewis, who is also an FDN-P and sleep consultant. Hi, Martha. How are you?
Hi, great, Jess. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Today's topic is going to be talking about the hidden causes of insomnia. Really interesting because, you know, sleep is such a huge part of everybody's daily activities or nightly activities, but can play such a huge role in not only health, but stress and emotions. And, you know, insomnia is one of those things where it can really come from a lot of different places, right, Martha?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'd love to get into that. But before we do, I want to make sure everybody knows that, you know, if you comment today, then we're going to send you some more information about FDN and how our training can really help you improve your health, your clients' health, and really can just be plugged into your business if you're already running a health coaching business. So make sure you guys comment below. And we might be giving away some other stuff and stuff like that as we go along. So you want to watch the whole show. And if you guys have any questions while we're going through, please feel free to put them in the comments and we will address them. And you want to, you know, that while we have Martha here, if you have questions about sleep and insomnia, make sure you let us know so that we can answer them for you. So Martha, I would love to know, what is your connection to FDN? Like, did you start out as an FDN or did you come in after you had done some training somewhere else? And then how's that really informed your practice in working with people in sleep?
Yeah, well, I have a background in nutrition, which I got a master's in holistic nutrition over a decade ago. And I remember graduating and still feeling really confused about what I should recommend for people to eat, because not everyone should be vegetarian or low carb or anything like that. And it also didn't give me any training into how to actually have a business. So I dabbled in practicing as a nutritionist, and I learned a lot about supplements, managing the supplement department of a health food store. But it wasn't until I took the FDN course that everything really connected for me, and I realized that I could really help people, and I had very specific guidelines I could give people that would be different for everyone because we are all so different. And so it also gave me all the knowledge I felt that I needed to really feel comfortable helping people improve their health and going far beyond diet, even though that's a huge part of it, but really diving deeper into health.
Yeah, that's so interesting about the kind of where you started. I also came from a health food store before I came into FDN. I was in a completely different career working in the entertainment industry in LA. And I was in the middle of do I stay in this path or do I go, because I had all these health issues. And then I started working for a health food store, and same thing, I got really interested in supplements, and I was doing all the trainings with the supplement companies and starting to make a little bit of headway, but I wasn't connecting the dots, right? I didn't have the foundational knowledge. And when I first went through FDN, I remember every day I would tell my boyfriend, I'm like, and now I understand how the adrenals work and how that's connected to the liver. And, you know, and he was just like, whoa, this is a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we went from guessing, you know, you can say, oh, everyone should take a probiotic and turmeric's a good thing to take and fish oil. And it's actually not true that one thing is good for everyone. So
exactly. Yeah, and the lab testing, the ability to have the lab testing and really dig in internally to see some of those things. You don't have to try this and see if it works and then try that and see if it works. You kind of skip a bunch of steps when you're working with clients.
Exactly. Yes.
It's awesome. So how has that informed you to doing what you're doing now? Because you're today we're talking about hidden causes of insomnia. So how has all of your previous training and then going through FDN really informed you to focus a lot on sleep with clients for their health?
Well, it came from my own sleep struggles. So that was my first real health challenge that I had. I mean, looking back, yes, I had other symptoms, but they were minor, right? Like some symptoms of hypothyroidism and some fatigue and inability to lose weight and things like that. But it wasn't until I couldn't sleep that I knew that something was really wrong with my health. And now that I've trained through FDN, now I understand where that's coming from, that so many different things going haywire in the body can lead to sleep problems. And not everyone struggles with sleep when their health deteriorates, but a good percentage of people do. And so that's why I'm passionate about sleep, because I know how much it sucks to not be able to sleep.
So how bad was your insomnia then?
Well, I mean, it actually wasn't that bad compared to some people I work with now. For me, it looked like I would have trouble falling asleep at night. And this all happened after I had a baby.
Okay.
So I went through him not sleeping, and then he became a great sleeper, and then I still wasn't sleeping. So I would try to go to bed early because I was exhausted, and then it would take me a long time to fall asleep. And then I would also wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and not be able to fall back asleep until 6, which is when my son was waking up.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I was tired, and I was still working full time. I had actually started my business as a pediatric sleep consultant because of my son's sleep issues. And here I was not sleeping and feeling like a total fraud.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I got into it.
That's crazy. Yeah. I've had insomnia issues when I was a kid, and then it kind of flipped and went the other way, where I was just always so tired all the time. Like my sleep deprivation was out of 10. And so I've kind of evened that out. And I've had that, my boyfriend's had that issue too, where it's like when we were starting him on parasite cleanses, he started cycling through these crazy insomnia episodes where he was sleeping every other day for like a month. And I mean, for him, he was like, I got so much work done. I learned new skills. Like he used it to his advantage, you know, as much as possible. But, you can, doing that for too long, you can see how that can really wear on somebody, just overall.
Yes, definitely. And some people are more sensitive to sleep deprivation than others. Like I am very sensitive to it, but we all know that it's not good for your health to not sleep enough consistently.
Definitely. So what are some of when you work with clients then, like, I'm sure you already have an inkling, like as soon as you said like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, the first thing I thought was parasites. Like what are some of the basic things that, might be red flags for you to go like, okay, this might be where I want to start. It might, you might not know exactly, but like the 3 a.m. thing, it's a pretty common one that I hear for people who have parasite infections that are active. Because that's like when they wake up and then they, spike your blood sugar and do all kinds of crazy things that make you go, I'm awake.
Yes. I mean, parasites are a very common reason. I don't know if this is your experience with testing, but I think about 90% of my clients have H. pylori in particular, which I realize isn't a parasite. It's a bacteria in the stomach, but any kind of pathogen like that can definitely cause those night wakings. So that's definitely something I look at. But what I've also learned through FDN is that we don't just want to focus on one thing and assume, oh, it's probably the gut health. So I'm just going to test for the gut and that's it. Mm-hmm. Everything is so connected. And I like to say that I want to find anything that could be causing my clients insomnia. So that's why it's also important to look at hormones and mineral balance and liver function and kind of anything that can cause those night wakings.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's not, I think one informs the other. That's kind of the thing with FDN, right? Like it's a domino effect with metabolic chaos. So it's like one thing causes this thing to happen and then that, and then sometimes it's all of them because it's just been happening for such a long time. So if you just focus on one area, like the parasite issue, right? Like, yeah, great, the parasites, but the parasites are also causing mineral deficiencies and they're also causing hormone imbalances and blood sugar problems. And so you kind of have to do them all at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Which is what FDN is so good at doing, is looking at the big picture and restoring function and everything at once. I think that makes so much sense.
Definitely. So when you start working with a client, where do you start then?
Well, I do four labs. So I do the Dutch test, that dried urine hormone test, because it looks at sex hormones and it also looks at the cortisol pattern. So about half my clients have this crazy high cortisol in the middle of the night. And that's usually from, yes, parasites are a big one, or low blood sugar. So yeah, so that one's really important. And it also looks at liver function too, somewhat. So I find that one really helpful too for that reason. I do the GI map to find what pathogens might be living in the gut, and to also see how healthy the gut is overall, how well you're digesting food, and how strong your immune system is in your gut. It also has another marker for liver function, so that's helpful. And then I do a food sensitivity test, because if people are eating foods they're sensitive to, that causes a lot of inflammation. And cortisol is actually an anti-inflammatory hormone. So then the body's constantly releasing cortisol, which can cause sleep disturbances when that's happening during the night. And then the last one I look at is the hair tissue mineral analysis. So I'm looking for heavy metals and toxic metals like copper and mineral imbalances. So those four give me a really big picture of everything that's going on in the body and what we need to focus on. Because for some people, it's 75% is the gut for sure, or 90%. And others, it's not. They might have, copper toxicity, like I mentioned, and low progesterone, low hormones overall that are really driving it. So it just depends on the person.
Yeah, and those are great. That kind of gives you a really good overview, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to know if any of you guys who are watching, like, have you run any of these tests for yourself or for your clients? Have you seen anything that would be correlated to sleep? Like, let us know, because we'd love to get some feedback from you guys. I know that when I've run a couple of these tests, it's been interesting, because you could be really hyper-focused and say, oh, I have this deficiency here, or, oh, I have this pathogen. But, you also have to take a step back and realize, like, oh, again, all these things are informing each other. And the whole point is to figure out on the other side, like with the lifestyle factors, with your food, with your rest, your exercise, like what could be causing these things to be out of control. And so, I mean, I've been working on my health for 2.5 years with using FDN, and then going beyond that. And I've noticed, like, when I've run, like, my GI map test, for instance, I ran last year, I ran one this year, and I was like, okay, what's the difference? They're both bad, but but what I did was, because my boyfriend's like, well, what got better? I'm like, okay, well, our pancreatic enzymes are still low, but they're higher than they were last year. That's awesome. The H. pylori is gone on me and has gone down significantly on his. I'm like, great. So we're lowering pathogenic load, and our body's doing better, and he can eat more food and I can eat more food, and we're not having these like weird reactions. And so that it's also, when it comes to the testing, I'm sure you're not just running these one time with clients, right? Like, you're probably doing them a series of different times to show the progression, because especially with the gut, like, how long does the gut really take to heal, right? Like, years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one client who I just ran the 3rd GI map. It's been a year. And, we finally gotten to the point where she doesn't have H. pylori. She doesn't have a parasite. She doesn't have any major pathogen. And her all the digestive markers look good. She has a little bit of bacterial overgrowth, and that's it. So I have seen how much this can work. And yes, it takes some commitment, and, but people who have had health issues, like, once you get to that place where you really want to get better, then you're motivated to make all the changes that you need, and it pays off.
Yeah. So when you're working with somebody, like, obviously if they're coming to you for sleep issues, right? Like, they're getting so much more than just, I'm going to be able to sleep through the night. Although that's a really, really good indicator. But, like, are you using anything with them to, like, track their sleep at all?
Not really, actually, because I find that tracking sleep for people with sleep issues, it can just lead to more anxiety, more focus on sleep. So Yeah, I mean, I have some people who want to geek out about it, and that's great. But when it creates anxiety and worry, then that's where I think that it's better to put that away. And I also want people to learn how to pay attention to their bodies, right? So it's more important how you feel every day versus knowing if you slept 7 hours versus 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. Like I think that it can be a little bit hyper focused also with the tracking where it's like, now everything's kind of gamified, right? So you get a score on your iPhone or your Android phone that tells you, oh, I got a 79 last night versus yesterday I got an 86. And it's like those numbers are insequential if you're not feeling well, right?
Yes, exactly.
I kind of fell into that trap initially. Like I got a sleep tracker. I wear one on my wrist every day. And in the beginning, I was like super hyper focused on like, oh, I need to get to bed at this time and I need to have this much amount of sleep and I need to do this. And my boyfriend like was just like, this is crazy. Like, just go to bed. So I can see how it can be a little bit of a trap, but I flip my perspective on it and instead I'm looking at it more of just like a marker because there have been some nights where I thought I got okay sleep, but then like halfway through the day, I'm like, why am I so tired? Like, and I look back, I'm like, oh, I only slept 6 hours last night. That's probably a huge indicator. So when you're working with clients, what are some of the things that you might see improve faster than things that take a little bit more time to kind of help somebody with that, I guess, that consistency, because this can be such a long process, especially if you've had chronic health issues, right? Like for me, I've had an autoimmune condition for 20 years. So it's like, those don't just go away in a month of doing a protocol or 2 months. But like, what kind of strategies are you using with people to kind of help them see that they're in that upward projection, even though sometimes they might fall back a little bit?
Yeah. And, it's so different for everyone too, as to how soon their sleep improves. Like some people, they start seeing better results immediately, and then others it can take a little bit longer. But I just do like to remind people that health is not linear, or getting healthy is not linear. It's definitely a roller coaster. And so I really focus on celebrating all the wins that they have and anytime they do sleep better, and just reminding them that it's normal, that it's going to be up and down, but eventually it's going to get a lot more consistent, and that's what we're going for. So yeah, so I think just reminding them of that, and people forget, we all forget. And I'll say, well, last week when we talked, you said that you had 5 great nights. So things are getting better. It's definitely working. But I definitely also start with the basics of sleep hygiene, and I call them the sleep rules because, for anyone who struggled to sleep, you've looked up what to do about it. And it's the same basic stuff: staying away from screens before bed, not drinking caffeine too late in the day, making sure to exercise, all of those basics. And from FDN, I've learned that there's so much more to it than that. And that people can follow all those rules and still not be able to sleep because there's something hidden going on in their body that's causing that. But it's still a great place to start for people who haven't done that. And like one of my clients, we had a session before we got her lab results back. I recommended some basic changes. She was trying to go to bed early, which is the same thing I did, because she was so tired. But then she couldn't fall asleep. So I'm like, wait, you used to go to bed at 11. Now you're trying to go to bed at 9. So that's what it is. We each have our own body clock, our circadian rhythm. Not everyone's, meant to go to bed from 10 to 6, for example. So once she started going to bed at 11, and she was, had some bad habits too of watching TV in bed. And so I really pushed her to remove that TV from the bedroom and do that somewhere else and earlier in the night, that she saw improvements immediately. Wow. So there are some basic things but a lot of times, you read about all these things and you either don't want to do them, or you try them one at a time and it doesn't work. And it really is about combining them all together, and always having an outside perspective is helpful.
Yeah.
Even for me as an FDN with my own health problems, I still, get mentors' help, because having that outside perspective is so key.
Definitely. And I love the whole, like, we have our own body clocks, right? Like that goes into the one size doesn't fit all
Yes.
attitude. Like, I think a lot of people out there, like the early to rise, early to bed, all of that kind of stuff. But I've done a little bit of research on that too, with like the specific body clock and circadian rhythms. And there's definitely a part of the population that do skew toward being more night owls. And whether you believe the evolution or not, of like, there were some people that stayed up later to keep the tribe from getting attacked by wolves or whatever. And then there were people who were up super early to do all of the tasks to make sure that everybody was, fed and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that it can be a little bit, can get somebody in their head a little bit too, if they're like, well, I'm just not tired at 9 o'clock at night. Like, is there something wrong with me? And then that makes it even worse, because then you go to sleep and then you're just thinking about it. And yeah. And it also, like with people who travel too, and you're going into different time zones, like you're going to have that adjustment as well. And I don't know if I was curious in your thoughts about this. Like, so what about people who maybe grew up in a different time zone their whole life and then moved to a completely different place? Like, have you ever heard of that maybe being a shift internally where they would end up skewing back toward their original time zone? And regardless of what the time is here, if they're not keeping up with certain hygiene things, right? Like not getting sun early in the morning, not doing the stuff to sleep at night to like keep them on track. Do you think there's like anything to that at all?
I don't know. I honestly haven't thought or read anything about that. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I also feel like we are adaptable and, that we get our cues from mainly light, ideally from the sun and from timing our food and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Makes me want to look it up too.
Yeah, right. It's just, it's just kind of, these are things that I feel like a lot of FDNs, they start to question, like, what's the main narrative that goes out there, right? Like about sleep. And like you said, the sleep hygiene, it's just rules of helping somebody get into a routine, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean that routine's going to be the same for everybody. But yeah, like having a routine in general, like whether it's a morning routine that keeps you to do certain things, eating around the same times every day, a routine before you go to sleep at night, it kind of triggers your brain, right?
Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely an important part of it.
So you started out working with kids. Do you feel like they're a little bit easier to work with when it comes to setting up some of those routines than it would be working with adults?
Yes. I mean, it's funny, because when I used to work with kids, and it's behavioral for kids usually. I mean, definitely now I see how some babies and children can have these health issues that could be affecting their sleep too. But for the most part, it's behavioral. And so I would work with babies for 2 weeks. And usually in a week, they're sleeping through the night. Whereas for adults, it can take months. And yeah, I mean, it can be hard to change habits too. So I think, how FDN has helped us be able to walk clients through those habit changes is really helpful as well, because that's a huge piece of it. But the longer you've been doing something over and over, the more that's ingrained in your brain, and those things are hard to change. So yes, babies were a lot easier.
Totally. And I think, so just kind of going back, like the internal health issues of like pathogens or hormone issues, like all the stuff that kind of connects to each other is definitely could be a contributing factor, but also habits, right? Like if you're so used to watching TV late at night and eating late at night and exercising later in the day and, watching things on your phone or being on screens and not really being able to trigger the brain into some of those sleep habits, that can be just its own journey of kind of shifting somebody into changing that. And then they'll see results, which may or may not happen quickly, depending on the person, I would assume.
Right, exactly.
What are some other things that you would think, like outside of just the internal infection or pathogen overload, the habit changes? Like, what other sort of hidden things have you found that maybe you didn't think were correlated to things like sleep and insomnia?
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea how much food sensitivities could play a role, especially gluten is a big one, because so many people react to that, and it can damage the gut and can cause that cascade of other health problems that continue. So yeah, that was a big surprise for me. And along with diet too is how important blood sugar is, of keeping those blood sugar levels steady. So that can be a big reason why people wake up in the night, especially around more of that 1 or 2 a.m. if they're going to bed around 10. Whenever your blood sugar drops too low, then your body releases cortisol because it is stressed, and that's going to wake you up. So helping people keep their blood sugar levels steady with diet, and also, understanding that blood sugar regulation can be one of those systems that stops working optimally over time in that metabolic chaos as things, different systems in the body start not working properly. It's going to be different for everyone. So sometimes I do have clients who are like, I eat, a healthy diet, and they're eating organic, they're eating lots of fruits and vegetables, all of those things, but it might not be right for their metabolism, or they still have these blood sugar imbalances that are showing up, even if they are trying to avoid refined sugar and carbohydrates. So that's another one that I'm looking at, is that blood sugar.
Do you think that the timing of when they eat late, like at night, makes a difference? Like, I've heard that a lot of people say like not to eat within 2 hours of going to sleep. I've heard people say eating more protein late at night could be helpful. Some people have said having a teaspoon of honey can help with stabilizing the blood sugar. Like, have you have any insight into any of those, or if there's like a good rule of thumb, or is it just different for everybody?
I mean, it's partly different for everyone. You definitely don't want to eat a big meal, within 2 hours of going to sleep, because your body's going to be trying to digest food and not be able to sleep as well. But having a small snack before bed can be really helpful. 100 to 200 calories to help, again, like even out that blood sugar so it doesn't dip too low in the night. But I recommend, what we've learned in FDN called the metabolic typing diet, where you find your ideal ratio of fat, carbohydrates, and proteins. And so, what someone should eat as a snack before bed is going to be different for everyone depending on that.
Back to that individualism, right? Like, it's not one size fits all.
Yes.
That's so great. Yeah, food is such a huge part of, I think, everybody's health issues or health improvements, right? Like, it's the fuel we give our bodies and what we give them to work with. So yeah, I think that's sound advice, but you definitely want to find out specifically what works for you, right? Not everybody's going to do well on a super high protein diet, and not everybody's going to do well on a vegan diet. So you got to figure out those individual aspects, or you could just throw yourself into more chaos, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. So we went over the labs you use, which is great. That's a great insight. If you guys didn't see that already, you're going to want to go back and rewatch the 4 labs that Martha uses, because they really just cover a lot of bases with clients, and can kind of help find some of those individual aspects so she can help with the recommendations she's giving. But yeah, just the sleep hygiene and making sure that, the food is correct. What would you say about, what if somebody's not really doing restful activities throughout the week? Could that contribute to them having a hard time kind of slowing down and going to sleep at night also?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all tend to live pretty busy lives, nonstop lives. And so it's no coincidence that so many people also have sleep issues and health issues. Our bodies are very able to deal with acute, in the moment stress. So you're getting chased by a bear, we know how to deal with that, but then ideally the stress should go back down. But when we're constantly up here all the time, your body's constantly producing cortisol all the time. When you have high cortisol, that can cause sleep issues, or as that starts to get depleted over time and your body isn't able to compensate anymore, then you can have sleep issues there as well. So yes, taking time to relax is really important. And I think people get addicted to stress because having that high cortisol feels good. I mean, cortisol, like I mentioned, is anti-inflammatory. It's also a painkiller. It helps you focus and concentrate and gives you energy. So it feels really good, but our bodies are not meant to have high cortisol all the time. So yes, taking time to relax is very important.
Yeah, I think that if this insomnia is in any way linked to somebody overthinking, like it's not necessarily a body issue or tension issue, but it's like a mind issue. Like if you're not in that practice of meditating or, slowing down and relaxing, then it can be really hard for your mind to shift. And that it can be a little difficult for somebody because a lot of the sleep aids that I've seen, even the healthy natural ones, are more focused on relaxing the body, right? Not necessarily focused on the mind as much.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But then also, I mean, that cortisol and things like that can also cause those racing thoughts too. So it just becomes this vicious cycle where it's hard to shut down.
Yes. Maria just commented and said, I use the term urgency addiction.
Yeah.
I like that.
Right.
Like everything needs to be done now. We live in a time of immediate everything, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, learning a little bit of patience can go a long way. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end of the show. So I wanted to ask you, Martha, like, is there anywhere that people can find you if they're looking to work with you, or, maybe recommending clients to you specifically for sleep issues if that's not what they're really focused on?
Yeah, so my website is thecompletesleepsolution.com. And on there, I have a checklist that you can download. It's called What's Causing Your Insomnia. It kind of lists different symptoms that you might have and ties it back into, do you think it's hormones or inflammation or detox issues, or what could it be, to give you some insights into what could be causing that. And so you can download that there, and it's The Complete Sleep Solution.
Oh, Sleep Solution. Got it.
Yep. I also have a group on Facebook called Sleep and Insomnia Help for Adults that anyone is welcome to join. And I talk about these kind of things all the time in there as well. So those are two ways you can easily get a hold of me.
Amazing. And Maria also said, I love the business name.
Thanks, Maria.
Well, it kind of just says exactly what you do, right? Like nobody has a question about it. They're like looking for sleep solutions. That's it. Awesome. Well, this has been super informative. And if you guys haven't watched the whole show, you definitely want to go back and rewatch it. It's going to be up on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll put a replay up on IGTV later this week. But we've been talking about the hidden causes of insomnia, and there's some really, really great tips in there of not just what you can do to help yourself and your clients, but also like which lab tests could be really helpful, what to look for in that. And I think if anybody is even working with clients that might have some issues like that, this is a great video to go back and rewatch multiple times. So thank you so much for joining us today, Martha. If you guys are interested in learning more about her, you can look at the comments. It is thecompletesleepsolution.com. And that is Health Coach Tip Tuesday. Thank you guys again for joining me every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And thank you, Martha, again for joining us this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, I'll see you guys next week.